Minji stood at the observation window of the Harmony's Promise, watching the stars streak past in brilliant lines of light. The ship was moving faster than anything humanity had ever built before, heading toward a world she had only seen in photographs and video transmissions. Her reflection stared back at her from the transparent steel, showing tired eyes and hair pulled back in a practical bun. She had not slept well in 3 days. Behind her, the diplomatic quarters hummed with quiet activity. Human crew members moved through the corridors with careful precision, speaking in hushed voices. Everyone knew how important this mission was. After 60 years of being watched by the Galactic Coalition, humanity was finally getting its chance. One mistake could set them back another generation. One success could open the stars to Earth's children. Daeho found her there, as he always did when she disappeared into her thoughts. He carried 2 cups of coffee, the real kind that cost a small fortune to bring on interstellar missions. "You're thinking too hard again," he said, offering her one of the cups. She took it gratefully, wrapping both hands around the warm ceramic. "I keep going over the protocols. The Velthari have 17 different greeting gestures depending on context. What if I use the wrong one? What if I accidentally insult Ambassador Kilvera? You've studied more than anyone else on this ship," Daeho reminded her. He was still wearing his engineering uniform, grease smudged on one sleeve. He must have come straight from the engine room. Besides, they know we're new to all this. They'll make allowances. Minji wanted to believe him, but she had read too many reports. The Velthari were ancient, their civilization spanning thousands of years before humans had even discovered fire. They were known throughout the Coalition for their rigid adherence to protocol and their complex social rituals. The files described them as insectoid in appearance, with crystalline exoskeletons that refracted light in strange patterns. No human had met one face-to-face until this mission. "Captain Hyejin wants me at the dinner tonight," Minji said. "Full formal setting. The Velthari delegation will be there." Daeho squeezed her shoulder. "You'll do great. You always do." She wished she felt as confident as he sounded. The day passed too quickly. Minji reviewed her notes 3 more times, practiced her pronunciation of Velthari phrases, and changed her formal uniform twice before settling on the first choice. When evening cycle began and the ship's lights dimmed to simulate night, she made her way to the diplomatic dining hall with her heart pounding. The room was beautiful, decorated with both human and Velthari cultural symbols. Long tables had been arranged in a specific pattern that supposedly held meaning in Velthari society. Minji had spent hours learning about it. Captain Hyejin stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. She was a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Liaison Minji," the captain said with a slight nod. "The Velthari will be here in 10 minutes. Remember, let Ambassador Kilvera initiate all physical contact, and keep your hands visible at all times. They find hidden hands threatening." Minji nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. She took her assigned seat and waited. When the Velthari delegation entered, the room fell silent. Ambassador Kilvera was taller than Minji had expected, nearly 7 feet in height. Their exoskeleton was a deep blue-green color, shot through with veins of what looked like crystal or glass. These crystalline structures glowed faintly with internal light, pulsing in slow, rhythmic patterns. The ambassador moved with deliberate grace, each step calculated and precise. Their face was difficult to read, compound eyes reflecting the room's light in fragmented rainbows. Behind Kilvera came 3 other Velthari, shorter and less ornately decorated. Assistants, probably. They took their positions at the table without speaking. The dinner began with formal speeches. Captain Hyejin welcomed the Velthari delegation and spoke about humanity's hopes for friendship between their peoples. Ambassador Kilvera responded in carefully pronounced human language, their voice like wind chimes and breaking glass combined. They spoke of ancient traditions and the careful evaluation required before new species joined the coalition. Minji listened and watched, trying to absorb every detail. She noticed that Ambassador Kilvera's crystalline structures pulsed faster when they spoke, and slower when they listened. The other Velthari never interrupted their superior, waiting several seconds after Kilvera finished before adding their own comments. Food was served, carefully prepared to be safe for both species. The Velthari ate slowly, using utensils that looked like tiny surgical instruments. Minji found herself staring at Ambassador Kilvera's hands, which were more like articulated appendages with multiple joints and delicate chitinous fingers. Halfway through the meal, Minji noticed something odd. Ambassador Kilvera kept glancing at her, not at her face, but at her hands. Every few minutes, those compound eyes would track to where Minji's hands rested on the table, then quickly look away. The crystalline structures in the ambassador's body seemed to pulse irregularly, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, without the steady rhythm they had shown earlier. Dr. Borum, the ship's xenobiologist, sat across from Minji. She was a quiet woman who preferred laboratory work to socializing, but she had been required to attend. She leaned forward slightly and whispered, "Have you noticed the ambassador's chromatic fluctuation? The light pulsing?" Minji whispered back, "It's irregular." In the briefings, Velthari bioluminescence was described as steady. "This is erratic." Before Minji could respond, Ambassador Kilvera stood abruptly. The other Velthari immediately fell silent. "Please excuse the interruption," Kilvera said, their voice tight. "I require a brief moment of private reflection. A cultural necessity. I will return shortly." The ambassador left the dining hall quickly, their assistants remaining at the table. The crystalline glow of their bodies seemed dimmer than before. Captain Hiejin continued the dinner smoothly, engaging the Velthari assistants in conversation about their journey. But Minji found herself distracted, thinking about those irregular pulses of light and the way Kilvera had looked at her hands. An hour later, Minji felt overwhelmed. Too many new protocols, too much careful conversation, too much pressure to represent all of humanity correctly. She quietly excused herself, leaving through a side door that led to the auxiliary corridors. She needed just 5 minutes alone to collect herself. The restroom near the diplomatic quarters was small but private. Minji locked the door behind her and leaned against the sink, taking slow, deep breaths. In the mirror, her face looked pale and strained. She ran cold water over her hands, letting the sensation ground her. She was still standing there, eyes closed, when she heard the door mechanism activate. Minji's eyes snapped open. She had locked it. How had someone opened it? Ambassador Kilvera stood in the doorway, their tall frame filling the entrance. The crystalline structures in their body were pulsing wildly now, bright and dark in rapid succession. They stepped inside and the door closed behind them. "Ambassador, Minji began. Kilvera moved faster than she thought possible. Those chitinous hands reached out and grabbed Minji's wrists, pulling her hands up between them. The ambassador's grip was firm but not painful, holding Minji's hands in place. "I need your hands," Kilvera said urgently, their voice breaking. "Now." Minji's heart hammered in her chest. She tried to pull back, but the ambassador's grip tightened. "What are you doing?" "Let me go!" "Please," Kilvera gasped. "Please, I need..." The door opened again. Deho stood there, his face going from confusion to shock to anger in the span of a heartbeat. He took in the scene. His wife trapped against the sink, an alien diplomat gripping her hands, the locked door. "Get away from her!" Deho shouted, lunging forward. Everything happened too fast for Minji to process. One moment she was trapped in the grip of Ambassador Kilvera, confused and frightened. The next moment Deho was there, pulling her away from the alien diplomat with strength born from panic and rage. Kilvera stumbled backward, their crystalline body structures flashing bright and then dark. The ambassador made a sound like glass breaking, high and sharp. They reached out toward Minji again, those chitinous fingers grasping at empty air. "Don't you touch her." Deho positioned himself between Minji and the ambassador, his body tense and ready to fight. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "You do not understand," Kilvera said, but their voice was weak now, barely audible. The light in their crystalline structures was fading, pulsing slower and slower. "I need..." "The hands." "Human hands." Minji grabbed her communicator from her belt with shaking fingers. "Security to auxiliary restroom, deck 3. Emergency situation with the Velthari ambassador." "Minji, are you hurt?" Deho turned to look at her, his eyes scanning her for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" "No, I don't know what just happened." Minji looked at her hands, which felt strange. There was a faint tingling sensation in her palms where Kilvera had gripped her. "They just grabbed me and said they needed my hands." Ambassador Kilvera had collapsed against the wall now, sliding down until they sat on the floor. The glow from their crystalline structures was barely visible, just faint flickers of light in the dim blue-green exoskeleton. The ambassador's breathing, if it could be called that, sounded labored and wet. "Stay away from them," Deho warned, but something in Minji's mind was starting to question what she had witnessed. The way Kilvera had grabbed her had been desperate, yes, but not violent. And now the ambassador looked sick, like someone in the grip of a medical emergency rather than someone who had just committed assault. Security arrived 30 seconds later, led by Lieutenant Jinwoo, a broad-shouldered man with tactical training and a stunner weapon already drawn. Behind him came 3 more security officers and Captain Hyejin herself, her face grave and controlled. "Report," Captain Hyejin commanded. Looking at the scene, Minji and Daeho standing together, Ambassador Kilvera on the floor against the wall. Daeho spoke first, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "I found this ambassador with their hands on my wife in a locked bathroom. They were restraining her, refusing to let her go." Captain Hyejin's expression darkened. She looked at Minji. "Liaison Minji, is this accurate?" Minji nodded slowly, still trying to make sense of it all. "Ambassador Kilvera followed me in here. They locked the door. Then they grabbed my hands and said they needed them. They wouldn't let go when I asked. 'Medical emergency,' Kilvera whispered from the floor. The words were slurred, barely human sounding. Not what you think." "Quiet," Lieutenant Jinwoo said firmly. He looked at Captain Hyejin. "Do you want them restrained?" The captain hesitated, clearly weighing diplomatic consequences against crew safety. "Yes, carefully, and get Dr. Borum here immediately. I want a medical scan of Liaison Minji to make sure she wasn't harmed." 2 security officers approached Ambassador Kilvera cautiously. The ambassador did not resist as they helped the alien to their feet and secured their hands behind their back, using specially designed restraints that could accommodate non-human anatomy. Kilvera's head hung forward, the crystalline structures now completely dark. Within minutes, the small auxiliary restroom had become crowded with people. Dr. Borum arrived with her medical scanner, immediately checking Minji's vital signs and examining her hands carefully. The 3 Velthari assistants came running down the corridor, their own crystalline structures flashing bright with what might have been alarm or anger. "What have you done to Ambassador Kilvera?" the lead assistant demanded, their voice sharp. "Why is our superior restrained?" Captain Hyejin stepped forward, her authority absolute. "Your ambassador was found in a locked room, physically restraining one of my crew members against their will. Until we understand what happened and ensure the safety of my people, the ambassador will remain in security custody." "This is outrageous. You do not understand our customs, our needs." The Velthari assistant moved toward Kilvera, but Lieutenant Jinwoo blocked their path. "Your customs do not include assaulting humans," Daeho snapped. "I don't care what species you are or what diplomatic mission you're on. You don't put your hands on people without permission." The tension in the corridor was thick enough to cut. Minji could feel her heart still racing, the tingling in her hands intensifying rather than fading. Dr. Borum was frowning at her medical scanner. "Taking additional readings, Captain," Dr. Borum said quietly. "I'm detecting unusual bioelectric activity in Liaison Minji's dermal layer. Her hands specifically. The patterns are abnormal but not harmful. It's like residual energy transfer of some kind." "What does that mean?" Captain Hyejin asked. "I don't know yet. I need to run more tests." Dr. Borum looked at Ambassador Kilvera, who was being held upright by the security officers. "I should also examine the ambassador. They appear to be in physical distress." "Absolutely not," one of the Velthari assistants said. "We will care for our own. This is a gross violation of diplomatic protocol. We demand that Ambassador Kilvera be released immediately, and that appropriate apologies be made." Captain Hyejin's jaw tightened. "What I see is a potential assault on a member of my crew. Ambassador Kilvera will be held in secure quarters until we investigate this incident fully. You and your fellow assistants may attend to the ambassador's medical needs under security supervision. We will be filing a formal complaint with the Galactic Coalition," the lead assistant said coldly. "This treatment is unacceptable." "File whatever you need to file," Captain Hyejin replied. "But understand that I will protect my crew first and worry about diplomatic consequences second. Lieutenant Jinwoo, escort Ambassador Kilvera and their assistants to the detention suite. Make sure they have access to their medical equipment, but maintain a security presence at all times." As the security team led the Velthari away, Ambassador Kilvera raised their head slightly to look at Minji. Those compound eyes were dim, barely reflecting any light at all.
"Sorry," the ambassador whispered.
"So sorry. Dying. Needed." Then they were gone. taken around the corner toward the detention area. Minji felt Daeho's arm around her shoulders, solid and comforting. She was shaking, she realized. The fear and confusion were catching up to her now that the immediate crisis had passed. "Are you sure you're okay?" Daeho asked, his voice soft now, concerned rather than angry. "I think so. I don't understand what happened. Why did they need my hands? What were they talking about?" Dr. Borum was still scanning Minji with her medical equipment. "I want you to come to Medical Bay for a full examination. Whatever contact occurred between you and Ambassador Kilvera left measurable effects on your biology. Nothing dangerous that I can detect, but definitely unusual." Captain Hyagin pinched the bridge of her nose, a gesture of frustration that Minji had rarely seen from the normally composed captain. This mission just became infinitely more complicated. "Liaison Minji, you're relieved of diplomatic duties until further notice. I want you to rest and recover. Engineer Daeho, you have permission to stay with your wife as long as she needs you." "Thank you, Captain," Daeho said. "Dr. Borum, I want a full report on your findings within 3 hours. Include everything you can determine about this bioelectric activity. And review all available files on Velthari physiology. There has to be an explanation for this behavior." "Yes, Captain." As the crowd in the corridor dispersed, Minji walked slowly toward Medical Bay with Daeho at her side. Her hands still tingled, and in her mind she kept replaying those final moments. The desperation in Ambassador Kilvera's voice. The way the ambassador had said dying and needed. What if this had not been an assault at all? What if something else had been happening? Something they did not understand. But Daeho's arm was around her, and the fear was still fresh in her mind. The way those alien hands had grabbed her. The locked door. The confusion and panic. Minji did not know what to think anymore. She just knew that nothing about this first contact mission was going according to plan, and the consequences might reach far beyond one incident in a bathroom. The Galactic Coalition was watching. Earth's future hung in the balance, and somewhere in the detention suite, Ambassador Kilvera sat in darkness, their crystalline body no longer glowing at all. Dr. Borum had not slept in 18 hours. She sat in her laboratory surrounded by holographic displays showing medical scans, security footage, and Velthari biological data. Her eyes burned with fatigue, but her mind was racing too fast to consider rest. Something important was hidden in all this information. She just had to find it. The security footage played again on the main screen. She had watched it 47 times now, each time looking for new details. The timestamp showed the moment Daeho entered the restroom. There was Ambassador Kilvera, tall and imposing, with their chitinous hands wrapped around Minji's wrists. Minji's face showed fear and confusion. It looked exactly like what everyone believed it to be, an assault, but Dr. Borum was a scientist. She dealt in evidence, not assumptions. She zoomed in on Ambassador Kilvera's crystalline structures. In the footage, they were pulsing wildly, flashing bright and dark in patterns that made no sense according to the Velthari biological files she had studied. Then she zoomed in further, focusing on the exact moment of contact between Kilvera's hands and Minji's skin. There. A brief flash of light, almost too quick to see. Dr. Borum froze the frame and enhanced the image. The light was coming from the point of contact itself, where alien chitin met human skin. It was not reflected light from the corridor. It was something else entirely. She pulled up Minji's medical scans from earlier that evening. The bioelectric readings from the woman's hands showed elevated activity that had lasted for nearly 3 hours after the incident. The patterns were complex, almost rhythmic. Dr. Borum had never seen anything like it in human biology. A thought occurred to her. She accessed the ship's external sensors and requested data on electromagnetic field activity during the time of the incident. The computer took several minutes to compile the information, and when the results appeared on her screen, Dr. Borum sat up straighter in her chair. There had been a significant electromagnetic pulse centered on Deck 3 Auxiliary Corridor section. The pulse had lasted exactly as long as Ambassador Kilvera had been in physical contact with Minji, and the frequency signature matched the bioelectric patterns in Minji's hands. Computer, show me baseline Velthari bioluminescence patterns from species database. The screen filled with images and data. Healthy Velthari displayed steady rhythmic pulsing in their crystalline structures. The rhythm was compared to a heartbeat in the files, essential for their neural function and overall health. Dr. Borum overlaid this data with the footage of Ambassador Kilvera from the dinner earlier that evening. The patterns did not match. Kilvera's bioluminescence had been irregular even then, hours before the bathroom incident. The ambassador had been struggling to maintain the proper rhythm, and it had been getting worse throughout the dinner. Dr. Borum's fingers moved quickly across her control panel, pulling up more data. She accessed the medical records that the Velthari delegation had provided when they came aboard. Standard procedure for mixed-species space travel. Most of it was general information, but there were notes about required environmental conditions and dietary needs. Nothing about bioluminescence irregularities. Nothing about medical conditions. But why would there be? If this was a chronic condition affecting Ambassador Kilvera, would they reveal that weakness to a species they were still evaluating for coalition membership? She switched to the current monitoring of the detention suite where Kilvera was being held. The visual feed showed the ambassador sitting motionless on a bench, attended by the 3 Velthari assistants. Medical equipment surrounded them, devices that Dr. Borum did not recognize. But what struck her most was the complete absence of light from Kilvera's crystalline structures. They were dark, lifeless. In the database images of healthy Velthari, the crystals never went completely dark. Never. Dr. Borum grabbed her communicator. Dr. Borum to Captain Hidgen. I need to speak with you immediately, and I need access to Ambassador Kilvera for medical examination. The captain's voice came back tired and strained. It's 3 a.m, Doctor. This better be important. It is. I think we have made a terrible mistake. Ambassador Kilvera was not assaulting Liaison Minji. They were dying. 15 minutes later, Captain Hijin stood in Dr. Borum's laboratory with Lieutenant Jinwoo and Engineer Daeho. Minji was there too, despite the late hour. She had refused to sleep, saying she needed to understand what had happened to her. Dr. Borum presented her findings on the large display screen, walking them through everything she had discovered. The irregular bioluminescence, the electromagnetic pulse, the bioelectric readings from Minji's hands, the complete darkness of Kilvera's crystalline structures now. I believe the Velthari require periodic bioelectric resonance to maintain their neural function, Dr. Borum explained. Their crystalline structures are not just decorative. They are part of their nervous system. When the resonance becomes irregular, they experience what we might call cascading system failure. Why grab Minji specifically? Daeho asked. His voice was calmer now, but still defensive. Why corner her in a bathroom? Because human hands emit a specific bioelectric frequency that can stabilize their neural crystals. I have been reviewing all our interactions with the Velthari delegation. Ambassador Kilvera was watching human hands constantly. Not faces, not bodies. Hands. They were looking for help, but something prevented them from asking directly. Captain Hyegen studied the data with a critical eye. You're asking me to believe that what looked like assault was actually a medical emergency? Yes, Captain. Look at the security footage again, knowing what we know now. Dr. Borum replayed the video, but this time she highlighted the bioelectric readings overlaid on the image. Ambassador Kilvera's life signs were failing rapidly. By the time they grabbed Liaison Minji's hands, they had maybe minutes left. The contact immediately stabilized their neural rhythm. You can see it here in the bioluminescence patterns. They started to synchronize. Minji stepped closer to the screen, staring at her own image being held by the alien ambassador. That is why they said they needed my hands. They were literally dying and I was the cure. Why not just ask for help? Lieutenant Jinwoo said. Why all this secrecy and desperation? Dr. Borum pulled up information about Velthari culture from the diplomatic files. According to these records, the Velthari place enormous value on self-sufficiency and strength. Asking for help, especially from a species they are evaluating, would be considered deeply shameful. It is possible Ambassador Kilvera was trying to hide their condition until it became a life-threatening emergency. Daeho ran a hand through his hair, looking troubled. So when I pulled Minji away from them, you interrupted the medical treatment that was keeping them alive, Dr. Borum finished quietly. Ambassador Kilvera's condition has deteriorated significantly since then. The Velthari assistants are trying everything they can, but their equipment is not working. I checked the monitoring feed. Kilvera has not moved or spoken in 4 hours. The laboratory fell silent. Everyone processed this information. the weight of it settling on them like a physical thing. Captain Hyejin spoke first. If what you are saying is true, Doctor, then we have imprisoned a dying diplomat who was seeking medical help. The diplomatic fallout from this will be catastrophic. Worse than that, Minji said softly. We have shown the Velthari that humans respond to medical emergencies with violence and detention. What does that say about our species? Daeho moved to his wife's side. You could not have known. I could not have known. Anyone walking in on that scene would have thought the same thing we did. But we should have investigated before we acted, Captain Hyejin said. She looked at Dr. Borum. Can we save the ambassador? If my theory is correct, yes. Liaison Minji's hands can provide the bioelectric resonance that Kilvera needs. But I do not know how long the treatment would need to last or if there are other factors involved. I would need to examine the ambassador directly and work with their medical team. Do it, Captain Hyejin ordered. Wake up the entire medical staff if you need to. I am lifting the security detention order. Ambassador Kilvera is to be treated as a medical patient, not a prisoner. Lieutenant Jinwoo, you will assist Dr. Borum with whatever she needs. Yes. Captain? Captain Hyejin turned to Minji. Liaison Minji, I know you have been through a traumatic experience, but I must ask, are you willing to help Ambassador Kilvera? This is entirely voluntary. No one will think less of you if you refuse. Minji did not hesitate. Of course I will help. If I can save someone's life, I will do it. That is what humans do. Daeho squeezed her hand. I will be there with you. Then let us move quickly, Dr. Borum said. We may not have much time left. They hurried through the ship's corridors toward the detention suite, now a makeshift hospital room. When they arrived, the Velthari assistants looked up with expressions that Dr. Borum could not quite read on alien faces. But the body language spoke of exhaustion and despair. Ambassador Kilvera lay on the medical bench, completely still. The crystalline structures were dark and lifeless. The Velthari's breathing was shallow and irregular. Please, the lead assistant said, their voice breaking. Please help. We cannot save them. Our equipment is failing. Ambassador Kilvera is dying. Dr. Borum stepped forward. We understand what happened now. We know what the ambassador needs. May we help? The Velthminji sat beside Ambassador Kilvera's medical bench for 3 hours, her hands clasped around the alien diplomat's chitinous fingers. She watched the crystalline structures in Kilvera's body pulse with increasing strength and regularity. It was beautiful in a strange way, like watching a dying star reignite. Daeho stood nearby, bringing her water and food that she ate with one hand, never breaking contact with the ambassador. Dr. Borum moved around them with her medical scanners, taking constant readings and making detailed notes. The Velthari assistants observed everything with an intensity that Minji could feel, even without looking at them. The resonance pattern is stabilizing, Dr. Borum announced. Ambassador Kilvera's neural function is returning to normal parameters. Whatever bioelectric frequency human hands produce, it is exactly what their physiology needs. How long will Minji need to maintain contact? Daeho asked, worry clear in his voice. I am not certain yet, but I believe once we achieve full stabilization, the effect may last for some time, perhaps days or weeks. Think of it like charging a battery. The lead Velthari assistant, who had introduced himself as Veltin, stepped closer. Forgive my directness, but I must ask questions. How many humans are aware of this biological property of your hands? None of us knew until tonight, Minji said. This is the first we are learning about it. Remarkable. Veltin's crystalline structures pulsed in what might have been amazement. Your species possesses a gift that you do not even recognize. In all our travels across the galaxy, spanning hundreds of worlds and thousands of species, we have never encountered any life form that naturally produces the specific bioelectric frequency our people require for health. Daeho frowned. You said require for health. Is this a common medical condition among your people? A long silence followed. The Velthari assistants exchanged glances, and Minji could sense the weight of a secret being held. Finally, Veltin spoke, their voice heavy with resignation. It is not a condition. It is our nature now. 300 years ago, our homeworld and all our colonies passed through a cosmic radiation field. Our crystalline neural structures were altered at a fundamental level. Since then, every Velthari-born has required periodic resonance alignment to maintain neural health. We have technology that partially helps, but it is imperfect. Our population has declined by 40%. Many of our people live in constant pain. The magnitude of this revelation struck Minji like a physical blow. Your entire species is suffering?
Yes, and we have kept this weakness hidden from the Galactic Coalition out of fear.
Species that show vulnerability are often exploited or considered lesser. We have searched for a solution for 3 centuries. We have visited 1,000 worlds. Until tonight, we had found nothing. Dr. Borum was already typing rapidly on her datapad. This changes everything. If human bioelectric fields can help, then we need to understand exactly how and why. I need to run more tests, gather more data, and we need to figure out a way to provide this help more efficiently than having humans physically hold Velthari hands for hours at a time. That comment sparked something in Deho's engineering mind. Minji could see it in his eyes, the way they focused and sharpened when he encountered a problem that needed solving. A way to provide the help more efficiently, he repeated slowly. Like a medical device. What are you thinking? Minji asked. Deho began pacing, his hands moving as he thought out loud. If the bioelectric frequency from human hands is what matters, then theoretically we could measure that frequency, replicate it, and create a device that produces the same effect. Like a resonance generator calibrated to human bioelectric signatures. Belton leaned forward with sudden interest. Your people could build such a device? Maybe. I would need to work with Dr. Baram to get precise measurements. And I would need access to your medical equipment to understand what you have already tried. But humans are pretty good at building things. Deho smiled slightly. It is kind of what we do. Dr. Borum was already nodding. I can map the exact frequency patterns being generated during contact. And I can measure the response in Velthari neural tissue. If we can isolate the specific variables that matter, we can recreate them artificially. How long would it take to build a prototype? Captain Heejin asked. She had been standing quietly in the corner observing everything. Minji had not even noticed when the captain had arrived. Days, maybe weeks for a working prototype, Deho said. But I would need my full engineering team and access to the ship's fabrication systems. You have whatever you need, Captain Heejin said firmly. This mission just became about more than diplomatic relations. If we can help the Velthari with their medical crisis, we should. Ambassador Kilvera stirred on the medical bench, their compound eyes fluttering open. The crystalline structures throughout their body glowed steadily now, pulsing with healthy rhythm. The ambassador's gaze focused on Minji, and recognition filled those alien eyes. Liaison Minji. Kilvera's voice was weak but clear. You stayed. You helped me even after I frightened you. You needed help, Minji said simply. That is all that matters. I am deeply sorry for causing distress. I should have found a way to communicate my need before the situation became desperate. My pride nearly killed me and nearly destroyed any chance of friendship between our peoples. You are alive now. That is what matters, and we understand better now. Kilvera tried to sit up and Velton moved quickly to assist. The ambassador looked around at all the humans present. Minji, Deho, Dr. Borum, Captain Heejin. You know about the resonance dependency now. You know our species' great weakness. We know you need help, Captain Heejin said, and we are prepared to offer it. Not as a bargaining chip or a tool for exploitation, but as one people helping another. Why? Kilvera asked. Your species gains nothing from helping us. The Galactic Coalition would expect you to use this knowledge as leverage for better terms of membership. For technology or resources or favorable trade agreements. Minji felt Deho's hand on her shoulder, warm and steady. She thought about what it meant to be human, about the values her parents had taught her and the principles that Earth's unified government had been built upon. That is not who we are, she said. When someone is suffering and we have the ability to help, we help. It is that simple. Simple. Kilvera repeated the word as if tasting it, trying to understand. Nothing is simple in galactic politics. Maybe it should be, Deho said. Maybe that is humanity's contribution to the galaxy. The idea that compassion does not need to be complicated. Over the next several days, the Harmony's promise transformed into a research and development facility. Dr. Borum worked around the clock with the Velthari medical team, mapping every detail of the bioelectric interaction between human hands and Velthari neural crystals. She discovered that the frequency was not just about electricity, but about the specific pattern of conductivity created by the unique properties of human skin. Deho assembled his engineering team and began designing a device that could replicate this effect. It needed to be portable, reliable, and capable of producing sustained resonance over long periods. The challenge was immense, but Daiho approached it with the methodical creativity that made him an excellent engineer. Minji found herself working as a liaison between the two teams, translating medical terminology and engineering concepts, helping humans and Velthari communicate across the barriers of biology and language. Ambassador Kilvera, recovered now and mobile, participated actively, providing insights into Velthari physiology that had never been shared with outsiders before. On the fifth day, Daiho presented the prototype. It looked like a bracelet made of flexible metallic mesh with small nodules that would rest against the skin. Inside were microgenerators powered by the same energy cells used throughout the ship, calibrated to produce the precise bioelectric frequency patterns that Dr. Borum had mapped. "We call it a resonance band," Daiho explained, holding up the device. A Velthari would wear it on their arm or wrist, and it should provide continuous neural resonance stabilization. Kilvera examined the device with obvious interest. "And this was designed in 5 days?" "Built in 5 days," Daiho corrected. "We still need to test it thoroughly. Would you be willing to be our first test subject?" The ambassador did not hesitate. "I would be honored." They attached the resonance band to Kilvera's arm and activated it. Everyone watched the medical displays as the device began producing its carefully programmed frequencies. The crystalline structures in Kilvera's body responded immediately, their bioluminescence synchronizing with the device's output. Minji held her breath, watching the ambassador's face for any sign of discomfort or failure, but instead, Kilvera's entire body seemed to relax, the tension that had been present since their initial meeting finally releasing. "It works," Kilvera whispered in wonder. "I can feel it, the constant background pain that I have lived with for my entire life. It is gone. Completely gone." Dr. Borum checked her medical scanners. Neural resonance is stable at optimal parameters. The device is performing exactly as designed. 97% efficiency compared to direct human contact. The Velthari assistants crow. 3 days after the successful prototype test, Ambassador Kilvera requested a private meeting with Minji and Daiho. The invitation came through official channels, but with a personal note that read simply, "There are truths I must share before we proceed further. Truths that carry great weight." They met in Kilvera's quarters, a space that had been modified to accommodate Velthari environmental preferences. The lighting was dimmer than humans preferred, with a slight violet tint. The air felt heavier somehow, thicker. Kilvera stood near a viewport showing the endless stars, their crystalline structures glowing with the steady rhythm that the resonance band had restored. "Thank you for coming," Kilvera said, gesturing to seating cushions that had been arranged for their human guests. "Please sit. What I must tell you deserves comfort and time." Minji and Daiho settled onto the cushions. Minji noticed that Kilvera seemed different now, more at ease in their own body. The constant tension she had observed during their first meetings was gone. This was what a healthy Velthari looked like. "You have already done more for my people than you understand," Kilvera began. "But before we move forward with plans to mass-produce the resonance devices, you must know the full truth of what you are saving. You deserve honesty even though it shames me to provide it." "You do not need to feel shame with us," Minji said gently. "Perhaps not, but I will feel it regardless. It is the burden of leadership." Kilvera moved away from the viewport and sat across from them, folding their long limbs with precise grace. "What I told you before was true but incomplete. 300 years ago, the radiation field did alter our neural structures, but that is not the full story." The ambassador paused and Minji could see the difficulty in speaking, even across the barrier of alien features and physiology. "We were warned," Kilvera continued. "A younger species, the Korath, had sophisticated sensors. They detected the radiation field in our path and sent warnings through the coalition channels. They begged us to change course, to delay our expansion fleet until the field had dissipated. But we were the Velthari. We were ancient and wise and powerful. We had survived for 5,000 years. We believed our technology could shield us from anything." Daiho leaned forward. "The radiation was worse than you expected. Far worse. And our shields were inadequate. Every Velthari in the expansion fleet was affected. Billions of individuals. And because our reproduction is tied to our neural resonance, every child born afterward carried the altered structures. Within a generation, Every Velthari alive had the condition. Minji felt a chill despite the warm air. An entire species changed in one generation. Yes, and do you know what we did then? We classified all records of the incident. We made it a state secret. We told the Galactic Coalition that our reduced presence was due to cultural shifts, to philosophical changes in how we valued expansion and growth. We hid our weakness behind lies and careful manipulation of diplomatic channels. Why? Deho asked. The Coalition has helped other species through crises before. There are records of medical aid, resource sharing, collaborative research. Kilvera's crystalline structures pulsed in what Minji was learning to recognize as bitter amusement. Because we were proud. Because we feared what others would do with knowledge of our vulnerability. Because we had spent millennia presenting ourselves as superior, as the wise elders of the galaxy. How could we admit that we had ignored the warnings of a younger species and doomed ourselves to slow extinction? The room fell quiet. Somewhere in the ship's systems, machinery hummed softly. The stars beyond the viewport wheeled slowly past, indifferent to the struggles of any species. 300 years we have searched, Kilvera said. We have visited over 900 worlds. We have studied hundreds of species. We have poured resources into research that would have fed our people, healed our sick, educated our young, all to find a solution to the problem we created through our own arrogance, Minji found her voice. And you found nothing until now. Nothing. Some species produced bioelectric fields, but never the right frequency. Some had crystalline biology, but incompatible with ours. We began to believe there was no solution, that we were simply watching our species die slowly over centuries. Our population has declined from 12 billion to 7 billion. The rate of decline is accelerating. We estimated that in another 200 years, there would be fewer than 1 billion Velthari left. In 500 years, extinction. Deho stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Minji knew that gesture. He was processing, thinking, calculating. You came to Earth knowing we were a young species, knowing we had no advanced technology or vast knowledge. What made you think we could help? Desperation, Kilvera said simply. We had exhausted every other option. Your species was one of the last on our list, barely space-capable, isolated on a single world. But you had something that caught our attention in the initial surveys. Your world has an unusually strong and complex magnetic field due to your planet's molten core and rapid rotation. We theorized that life evolving under such conditions might develop unique bioelectric properties. So we were a last resort, Minji said. Not with anger, but with understanding. Yes, and I am ashamed to admit that when I first met you, when I attended that dinner, I did not expect to find what we needed. I thought this would be another failed attempt. Another world crossed off the list. Another step closer to accepting that my species was doomed. Kilvera stood and moved closer to them, their tall form casting shadows in the dim light. But then I felt it. During the dinner, when I looked at your hands, there was something in the bioelectric field, a frequency that called to my failing neural structures like water calls to someone dying of thirst. I did not know if you felt it too, if you knew what you were carrying in your very cells, and I could not ask. The diplomatic protocols, the cultural barriers, my own pride, they all held me silent. Until you were dying, Minji finished. Until I was dying and nothing else mattered anymore. Not pride, not diplomacy, not the carefully constructed lies we have told for 3 centuries. Only survival. Kilvera looked at Minji with those compound eyes that reflected light in fragmented rainbows. When I grabbed your hands in that restroom, I was not thinking clearly. The neural degradation was affecting my judgment. My language processing everything. I frightened you, and for that I carry deep regret. But in that moment you saved my life. A young human from a young species saved the life of an ancient ambassador from an ancient people. There is poetry in that, I think. Irony, too. Deho turned from the viewport. You said we deserve the truth. Why tell us all this now? You could have kept the history secret. Let us think this was just an unfortunate medical condition, rather than the consequence of ignored warnings and pride. Because you are offering to help my entire species, Kilvera said. You are proposing to manufacture billions of devices, to share your biological secrets freely, to send human volunteers to our worlds to assist with treatment while the devices are being produced. You are doing all this without asking for payment or technology or political advantage. The least I can offer in return is honesty about what you are saving. The ambassador's crystalline structures pulsed slowly, steadily, kept healthy by the human-made device on their arm. You should know that you are saving a species that made terrible choices. A species that let arrogance override wisdom. A species that hid the truth for 300 years while its people suffered. You should know all this and make your choice with full knowledge. Minji stood and approached Kilvera, looking up at the tall alien diplomat. Every species makes mistakes. Every species has moments of pride and fear and poor judgment. That does not mean you deserve to die for it. Your ancestors made choices that harmed your people. But you are not your ancestors. You are here now, working to fix what they broke. That is what matters. You are remarkably forgiving for someone I traumatized in a bathroom, Kilvera said, and there was something that might have been humor in their voice. Minji smiled. Humans believe in second chances, and third chances, and as many chances as it takes for people to become better than they were. If we judge species by their worst moments rather than their potential for growth, humanity would have destroyed itself centuries ago. Deho joined them, standing beside his wife. We are going to help your people. Not because you are perfect or because you made all the right choices in the past. We are going to help because you need help and we have the ability to provide it. That is what humanity does. We help. Kilvera looked at them both, these small humans from their isolated planet, and felt something shift in their understanding of the galaxy. For 300 years, the Velthari had believed that showing weakness meant destruction. They had hidden their suffering, maintained their facade of strength and wisdom, and grown more isolated with each passing year. But here were the humans, barely out of their own solar system, with no vast fleet or ancient knowledge, offering unconditional help to strangers, not because they expected reward, but because it was simply the right thing to do. I do not understand your species, Kilvera admitted, but I am grateful for you, more grateful than language can express. The conference chamber aboard the Harmony's Promise had been transformed into a joint command center. Holographic displays filled the space, showing technical schematics, production timelines, and maps of Velthari territory spanning dozens of star systems. Humans and Velthari worked side by side, their collaboration growing smoother with each passing day. Deho stood at the main console, presenting the latest iteration of the resonance device design to an assembled group of engineers and medical specialists from both species. He looked tired, his uniform rumpled from too many hours in the workshop, but his eyes were bright with the satisfaction of solving complex problems. We have completed testing on the third-generation prototype, he explained, manipulating the holographic display to show the device's internal structure. The power cells now provide continuous operation for up to 6 months before requiring replacement. We have also reduced the manufacturing time per unit from 40 hours to 8 hours by streamlining the assembly process. A Velthari engineer named Krenva examined the schematics with their multiple optical sensors. The efficiency improvements are impressive, but 6 months of operation assumes optimal conditions. What about environmental variables? Temperature extremes, radiation exposure, electromagnetic interference? Good question. Deho pulled up additional data. We have tested the devices under simulated conditions matching known Velthari habitats. Performance remains stable across a range from -60 to +70 degrees Celsius. Radiation shielding protects the internal components up to exposure levels well beyond what is found on any inhabited Velthari world. As for electromagnetic interference, the devices are self-adjusting. They monitor ambient conditions and modify their output patterns to maintain effective resonance, regardless of environmental noise. Dr. Borum added her medical perspective. We have also conducted long-term biological monitoring of Ambassador Kilvera and the other Velthari volunteers wearing the devices. Neural function remains optimal. There are no side effects or degradation over time. In fact, we are seeing some interesting secondary benefits. Cognitive processing speeds have improved, and reports of chronic pain have disappeared completely. Because our people have never known true health in living memory, Belton observed, the lead assistant had become an essential bridge between the two species, their knowledge of both Velthari biology and diplomatic protocols invaluable. What we considered normal function was actually compromised function. We did not know how much we were suffering because we had nothing to compare it to. Minji, who had been quietly observing from the side of the room, spoke up. How many devices do we need to produce to treat every Velthari who needs one? Deho pulled up production calculations. Current Velthari population is approximately 7 billion individuals spread across 43 colonized worlds. Every Velthari needs a device, so we are looking at 7 billion units. With our current production capacity using the Harmony's Promise fabrication systems, we could manufacture about 50 devices per day. At that rate, it would take 384 years to produce enough for everyone. The room fell silent as the magnitude of the task settled over everyone. 384 years. Multiple human lifetimes. Entire generations would live and die before the project could be completed. That is unacceptable, Captain Hyejin said firmly. She had been standing near the back of the room, listening to the presentations. Now she stepped forward, command presence filling the space. We need to scale up production immediately. What would it take to reduce that timeline to something reasonable? Daeho manipulated the calculations, running scenarios. If we could establish dedicated manufacturing facilities on multiple worlds using mass production techniques, we would need approximately 500 production lines running simultaneously. With that capacity, we could complete the project in approximately 18 months. 500 production lines, Krenva repeated. That would require industrial infrastructure, raw materials, trained workers, quality control systems. The resources needed would be enormous. But possible, Daeho insisted. Humans have experience with large-scale industrial production. We built cities on Earth. We constructed the Harmony's Promise and a dozen other interstellar vessels. We can build production facilities. Captain Hyejin nodded.
I am going to present this plan to the Galactic Coalition Council.
We need their approval and support to establish manufacturing operations on this scale. The Council may not agree, Kilvera warned. The ambassador had been participating in the planning sessions. Their input invaluable. Large-scale industrial operations require significant resources and coordination. The Council tends to move slowly on such matters, preferring extensive debate and review before committing to major projects. Then we will need to convince them that this is urgent, Captain Hyejin said. We will need to make them understand what is at stake. 2 weeks later, the Harmony's Promise arrived at Coalition Station 7, a massive orbital platform that served as one of the primary diplomatic centers for the Galactic Coalition. The station was home to representatives from 47 member species, each with their own agendas and interests. Captain Hyejin, Ambassador Kilvera, Minji, and Daeho presented their case before the Coalition Council. The chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate species of vastly different sizes and environmental needs. Some representatives sat in environmental pods while others floated in anti-gravity fields. The diversity was overwhelming, but Minji focused on the presentation. Captain Hyejin spoke first, outlining humanity's discovery of the resonance solution and the successful development of the devices. She presented medical data, testimonials from Velthari volunteers, and the technical specifications of the technology. Then she made the request: permission and support to establish manufacturing facilities across Coalition space to produce 7 billion units within 18 months. The council chamber erupted with questions and concerns. A representative from the Korath Dominion stood, their crystalline body refracting light in sharp angles. This proposal would require unprecedented cooperation and resource allocation. What does humanity expect in return for this aid? Nothing, Captain Hyejin said simply. The chamber fell silent. Council members looked at each other, confusion evident even across the barriers of alien biology and culture. Nothing, the Korath representative repeated. You expect no payment, no technology transfer, no political advantage? We expect nothing. We are offering help because the Velthari need it, and we have the ability to provide it. Another representative from a species Minji did not recognize spoke up. This is highly irregular. In coalition history, major aid projects always involve negotiated terms, exchanges of value, carefully balanced agreements. Pure altruism on this scale is unknown. Ambassador Kilvera rose to speak. The council should know that I initially expected humanity to leverage this discovery for maximum advantage. It is what any species would do, what the Velthari would have done if our positions were reversed. But these humans, Kilvera's crystalline structures pulsed with emotion. They have shown me that there are species in this galaxy who help simply because it is right. They ask for nothing because they need nothing except the knowledge that they have reduced suffering. A long debate followed, with representatives arguing various perspectives. Some supported the proposal enthusiastically. Others were skeptical, worried about precedent or hidden motives. A few expressed concern about giving humanity such prominent access to coalition resources and manufacturing capabilities. Finally, the council chairperson, a being of pure energy contained in a magnetic field, called for a vote. The resolution was simple. Would the coalition approve and support the establishment of resonance device manufacturing facilities using human technology and oversight? The vote was not unanimous, but it passed with 73% approval. Humanity's proposal is approved, the chairperson announced. The coalition will provide manufacturing infrastructure, raw materials, and logistical support. In recognition of this unprecedented act of species-to-species compassion, we also grant humanity immediate elevation from provisional member status to full Tier 2 civilization status, with all associated rights and privileges. The chamber erupted in noise as representatives reacted to this unexpected announcement. Tier 2 status was significant, normally requiring decades of observation and evaluation. Humanity had just skipped an entire tier of membership. Captain Heejin bowed formally. The human delegation accepts this honor with gratitude. But I want to be clear, we did not do this for advancement or recognition. We did it because it was the right thing to do. We know, the chairperson said. That is precisely why you deserve the recognition. In the months that followed, the manufacturing initiative became the largest cooperative project in coalition history. 500 production facilities were established across 20 different worlds. Human engineers trained coalition workers in the assembly process. Velthari medical specialists coordinated distribution and fitting of the devices. Minji found herself traveling between worlds, serving as cultural liaison and project coordinator. 6 months had passed since the completion of the resonance device distribution project. The Harmony's promise emerged from quantum transit at the edge of the Velthari home system, and Minji stood at the observation window watching the planet grow larger on the view screen. It was her third visit to this world, but the sight still filled her with wonder. The Velthari homeworld was beautiful in an alien way. 3 moons orbited in complex patterns, their gravitational interaction creating spectacular tides on the planet's vast oceans. The land masses glowed faintly even from orbit, bioluminescent vegetation that had evolved alongside the Velthari themselves. Cities spread across the continents like jeweled webs, their architecture incorporating natural crystal formations that caught and refracted light in endless rainbows. Daeho came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Nervous about the ceremony? A little, she admitted. It is one thing to accept an honor via transmission. It is another to stand in front of billions of Velthari and accept it in person. You will be great. You always are. The landing ceremony was massive. The Harmony's promise set down at the primary spaceport of Krenval City, the Velthari capital, where a crowd of thousands had gathered. As the human delegation descended the ramp, the sound that greeted them was like nothing Minji had ever heard. Millions of Velthari across the city activating resonance harmonics in their devices simultaneously, creating a sound like singing crystal that filled the air and vibrated through her bones. Ambassador Kilvera stood at the base of the ramp, their crystalline structures pulsing with healthy, steady light. Beside them stood dozens of high-ranking Velthari officials, all wearing the resonance devices that human ingenuity had created. Some of these devices had been personalized, decorated with precious metals and gems, transformed from medical equipment into symbols of survival and hope. Welcome back to our world, Krenvala Minji and Krenvala Daeho, Kilvera said formally, using the honorific titles. You return to a people transformed. They were escorted through the city in a procession that moved slowly through streets lined with Velthari citizens. Everywhere Minji looked, she saw the evidence of restored health. Children ran and played with energy that would have been impossible before the resonance devices. Elderly Velthari moved with grace rather than painful stiffness. The entire population seemed to glow brighter, their crystalline structures pulsing with vitality. Look at them, Kilvera said quietly as they walked. These children here running and laughing, they are the first generation in 300 years to grow up without pain. They do not know what it was like before, and that is a gift beyond measure. They will become scientists and artists and explorers, their minds unhindered by the neural degradation that has held us back for so long. They are our future, and you gave us that future. The ceremony took place in the Great Hall of Resonance, a massive structure that had once been a medical facility, but now served as a monument to the human Velthari alliance. The walls were lined with holoprojectors showing images from the past 18 months. Humans and Velthari working together in factories. The first successful device tests. Ambassador Kilvera holding Minji's hands in that moment that had started everything. Production facilities across dozens of worlds, and finally, the faces of individual Velthari whose lives had been saved. Millions more watched via transmission. The ceremony broadcast across all Velthari worlds and throughout Coalition space. This was more than just honoring two humans. This was the Velthari publicly acknowledging their weakness, their history, and their gratitude. It was a moment of cultural transformation. The speaker of the Velthari High Council, an ancient being named Tirvan, whose crystalline structures had grown thick with age, addressed the assembled crowd and the billions watching remotely. For 300 years, our people have lived with a terrible secret. We suffered in silence, hiding our pain behind pride and fear. We thought that showing weakness would destroy us, that asking for help would make us targets for exploitation. Tirvan paused, letting those words settle. We were wrong. The humans showed us that true strength lies not in hiding weakness but in facing it honestly. True civilization is not measured by technology or military might, but by the willingness to help those in need without expectation of reward. The ancient Velthari turned to look at Minji and Deho, who stood on the ceremonial platform feeling small and overwhelmed. These two humans and their entire species have taught us what compassion truly means. When Ambassador Kilvera was dying, these hands saved one life. When their species learned of our suffering, these same hands reached out to save billions. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. They helped because it was simply the right thing to do. Tirvan approached them, carrying a small crystalline object that glowed with internal light. The title of Krenvala has been created for you, but titles are just words. What we offer you today is something more substantial. We offer you partnership, not in the political sense but in the deepest meaning of that word. We offer you our knowledge accumulated over 5,000 years of civilization. We offer you our friendship, unconditional and eternal, and we offer you this. The ancient Velthari held up the crystal. This is a quantum navigation key, the technology that allows our ships to traverse the galaxy in days rather than years. We have never shared this technology with any other species. It is one of our most closely guarded secrets. But we share it with you now, freely and without restriction, because you have shown us that some species can be trusted with such gifts. Minji felt tears welling up again. She looked at Deho, saw the same emotion reflected in his eyes. This was more than just technology transfer. This was the Velthari opening themselves completely, holding nothing back, trusting humanity with their most precious resources. We cannot accept this without giving something in return, Minji said, her voice carrying across the great hall. It would not be right. Tirvan's crystalline structures pulsed with something that might have been amusement. You have already given us everything. You gave us our lives, our future, our hope. But if you insist on reciprocity, then share with us what makes humanity special. Share your capacity for compassion, your willingness to help others, your belief that every life has value regardless of species or origin. Teach us to be more like you. The ceremony continued with formal speeches and traditional Velthari rituals, but Minji found her attention drifting to the crowd. She saw Velthari holding their children, the little ones' crystalline structures still small and delicate but glowing with perfect health. She saw elderly Velthari who had lived 300 years of pain, now standing straight and strong. She saw young Velthari couples, their bioelectric resonance synchronized not through desperation but through choice and love. Later, after the official ceremonies ended, Kilvera took Minji and Deho to a private observation deck high in the city. From here they could see the curve of the planet below and Earth rising over the alien horizon, a small blue marble visible in the sky. Your homeworld, Kilvera said, gesturing to the distant planet, so small, so far from the center of galactic civilization. Yet from that tiny world came the salvation of an entire species. How strange the universe is, that the most powerful gift would come from one of the youngest, newest members of the coalition. Maybe that is the point, Deho said thoughtfully. Maybe being young and new means we have not learned to be cynical yet. We still believe that helping others is reason enough to act. The galaxy needs that belief, Kilvera said. For too long, the coalition has operated on principles of transaction and advantage. Every species looking out for itself. Cooperation only when it serves mutual interest. You have shown us a different way. Minji looked down at her hands, the same hands that had held Kilvera in that restroom all those months ago. Ordinary human hands with their unique bioelectric properties. Who would have thought that something so simple, so basic to human biology, would become the key to saving billions of lives? We have started something, I think, she said. Not just with your people, but throughout the coalition. Other species are talking about the human approach to diplomacy. They are questioning their own assumptions about weakness and strength, about help and exploitation. Change comes slowly to ancient civilizations, Kilvera cautioned. But yes, you have planted seeds. The Velthari will help those seeds grow. We have already begun reaching out to other species, offering our knowledge and assistance freely as you taught us. Perhaps in time the entire galaxy will learn to operate on principles of compassion rather than pure self-interest. A chime sounded, indicating an incoming transmission. Kilvera checked their communication device and smiled, if such an expression could be read on Velthari features. Captain Hyejin is requesting our presence. Apparently, the Coalition Council has another proposal for humanity. They made their way to the communication center, where Captain Hyejin was speaking with the council chairperson via holographic transmission. The captain gestured for them to join the conversation. I was just informing the ambassador and engineers, Captain Hyejin said. The council is formally requesting that humanity establish a permanent diplomatic and medical mission to Coalition space.